And so I want to kick this off I framed my talk about the mass formation phenomenon in medicine, and a wonderful example of that was the Women's Health Initiative, which was a catastrophe, a study that was proclaimed with great certitude as factual, the final gold standard. And I personally recall a New England Journal article that concluded at the end that any physician who does not immediately take his patients or her patients off their hormone replacement therapy is no better than a witch doctor. I will never forget that. Do you remember that quote? You're a witch doctor if you don't immediately take action based on this study, which I dutifully did. It did not fit anybody's clinical experience, but we all thought, I guess this here's an example of where clinical experience doesn't fit the science. Immediately had a group of patients who were getting thoracic spinal compression fractures, hip fractures, depression, vascular disease, dementia. It was fast how my female patients fell apart. And within 6 to 12 months, I would say half of them demanded that I put them back on hormone replacement therapy because it had ruined their life and they don't care about risk or witch doctoring. So I will start with you, Dr. Jila, what your experience was with this.
You know, I was actually a second-year resident when the study was published, and the way we were taught at that point is, okay, no more hormones for anybody in clinic, and if they complain, just tell them it's not good for them, that they're gonna get breast cancer and have a heart attack or a stroke, and they're gonna die. So that was a training we got, literally overnight. So, you know, we stopped treatment for everybody, including vaginal estrogen, which was really not even, it's absorbed locally. It had nothing to do with any of these claims that were made. And so it really impacted how I practiced moving forward. We learned nothing. We were not given any, guidance.
There are still true believers out there, by the way.
100%.
We are this 10% that went, sorry, but we did get a lot of that 70% in.
Mm-hmm.
So most physicians are, I would say, in this camp of at least deep skepticism about the group that is still a true believer.
Yeah.
Emily?
Yeah, so I really looked at it more as a journalist, looking at women's health and sex differences in medicine. And I was really struck at the time by the fact that this was a statistical issue primarily. So anybody who went back and looked at the study would recognize they were reporting relative risk, not absolute risk. And what you really want to know whenever you're looking at any outcome is absolute risk.
Emily, I'm having a reaction emotionally because when you say if anybody would look back, many people looked at the study, they didn't know how to read it.
But it goes to this idea of scientific literacy, I would argue, right? So
exactly.
And the fear mongering. And so I think also everything in medicine is risk reward. And so if
except public health.
So to your point though, if you're at risk for fractures or dementia, you have to weigh that while also thinking, what is your risk for breast cancer? And so I feel like very rarely, especially women, because we haven't studied female bodies nearly as much as we've studied men's, you're not looked at as a whole person. And so you have this really glaring statistical obvious error. I mean, I'm gonna get the numbers wrong, but you guys probably know. It went from let's say 3 women to 6 women developed breast cancer. So they said that your rate, increased 100%, but it was out of 10,000 women. So 6 out of 10,000. Now that's not the right number, but that gives you an idea of the framework.
Yeah.
4 in 1,000.
Like 25%.
One additional woman.
One additional woman. So this.
25.
And I'm not blaming doctors. I mean, I know you guys, you don't have time to go back and do the research yourself and look at every study and rerun the numbers.
But it gives you a window into how we're trained.
But even now, I would say
very much authoritarian, militaristic, culty.
Yep.
You just fall in line, you do your thing.
And you're defaulting to the worst case scenario rather than, to your point, looking at these incredible benefits that women were getting.
Yeah, so I'm just a couple years younger than Jila, and so I was in my medical training when this all came about, and the ramifications of it, not only for the patients, but for people like me who were learning. When I was in residency, it was basically like you give estrogen for severe vasomotor symptoms, and you give it for the shortest duration possible, and then you take them off of it immediately. And so it not only did harm to patients, but it did harm to clinicians. And now in 2026, everybody in my community is scrambling, saying, I don't have the tools to offer these patients right now. And so that's the unfortunate part that happened. I take care of so many women and do so much hormone replacement therapy as a practicing clinician. It's just mind-blowing. But for somebody that is so paternalistic, no, and you've never treated patients, they don't see the positive at all. And I tell patients every day, I can do X, Y, Z and save you from your breast cancer, but we're all going to die of something. And so when we think about the ramifications, there's estrogen receptors in essentially every cell of our body. You know, we've always looked at just vasomotor symptoms, but the heart, the brain, the bones, it's a big deal.
I'll give you a quick case example. We're going to talk about perimenopause too. This woman, fertility treatment, ovarian hyperstimulation after fertility treatment, was family history of early menopause. Now, with multiples in her 30s, starts having depression and mood, sleep problems and things. Is told, you're raising triplets. Relax. Here's some serotonin reuptake inhibitors. More antidepressants. Go see a therapist. Yeah, honey. Fast forward to age 45. A friend gets put on bioidentical hormones. Her life has changed. This woman goes on bioidentical hormones and is completely transformed. No other medications. All the symptoms went away. Furious that no one brought this up. And literally not only felt the relief of all the symptomatology, but felt like a part of herself had been restored that had died or something. I'm sure you hear stories like that with menopausal women. Happens to have been my wife. So I watched this firsthand happen. Mm-hmm. So maybe a little bit on perimenopause and how we can jump in at that point and not make women suffer so much.
Well, I think the way this has been, treated and looked upon for the past 25 years is, number one, you'll get over it. You suffer in silence, the symptoms will eventually subside, and you'll be fine and just move on with your life. That's what we've been told. That's what women have been told by their practitioners from every aspect. What we need to change, and the narratives that are being discussed in rooms like these and conferences are that this starts in your mid-30s to early 40s. It is a decade-long process. It is a natural physiologic process that every woman born with an ovary will go through at some point in life. It affects 51% of the population. These are not small numbers, and we don't need to suffer because it's more than just symptom management. It's actually disease preventative for the future. So it's depending on how do you want to live when you're 60, 70, and 80, because women are living longer than men, but in poorer health, unfortunately, due to this huge decline of estrogen in our 40s and 50s, when we should be building bone, when we should be building muscle and strength, and that way we can live much better post. And the other fact of the matter is women think, unfortunately because of the study, they're going to get breast cancer. You say hormone replacement therapy, they equate that to getting breast cancer, where a woman's #1 risk of mortality post-menopause is cardiovascular disease. But they don't know that.
I'm noticing there are giant Instagram and TikTok sort of avenues you can go down now where they're supporting this kind of approach. Diet?
Yeah, well, so I would just add to the Instagram thing that part of the inspiration for this class, which Mia, who's sitting here, and I have been working on for about 3 years, it takes a lot of the interviews and things that I did as a journalist talking to people about sex differences in medicine, but it's really focused on perimenopause and menopause because there are so many influencers getting it wrong. And they don't understand the basic biology. So much like if you go to the foundations class, you learn how the food you eat gets, transferred into positive energy or transferred into chronic disease. This class goes to the basic biology, female biology, so that you as a patient, or we're gonna get CMEs for it, a doctor can learn, like, how is this body, how do we have estrogen receptors in every organ? And when you go through perimenopause and people say like, oh, you're gonna get a dad bod or a beer belly and it's normal. It's not, it's ectopic fat. That's fat that you're not supposed to have on your organs. It is not normal, but you become more insulin sensitive as your estrogen declines. So the diet piece for us is obviously paramount, and it's this role of carbohydrates and sugar primarily and seed oils and how they really negatively impact women at midlife.
should we tackle mammography at all? Should we go ahead?
So there's a lot of new information coming out with mammography, breast ultrasound, MRIs, thermography, and the breast ultrasounds, and what's best, and who do I go to, and who do I trust? And I mean, I always go back, okay, listen, we have gold standards for a reason. So I stick with the mammogram and the breast ultrasound, do the risk assessment, which actually they just changed, where we were only getting a lifetime and a 10-year risk assessment based on family history or personal history, the Tyrer-Cusack assessment. And now they're going to add a 5-year component to it, which is really more helpful. Well, I don't want to know what my lifetime or 10, I want to know what's going to happen to me in the next 5 years. So they're changing a lot of that. So a lot of, I mean, the way I look at my patients is we do the mammogram, we do the breast ultrasound. Depending on what we see, then we follow up with an MRI. This is also helping us guide these women where if they want to be on hormone therapy, we're looking at you more than once or twice a year. So we're really keeping on top of it. We are finding things at stage 0 a lot more frequently now than we were before. So I think it's changing the atmosphere of what we're doing.
But fatigue and brain fog in the psychiatric setting, in the medical setting, in the gynecological, it's a common symptom, Jamie.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's everything is connected in the body. The thyroid's connected, the ovaries are connected, the brain, all the organs are connected. Muscle talks to your other organs too. And so we're so siloed in medicine that like, I only look at the heart, I only look at the brain, I only look at the ovaries. And so, you look at clinicians like myself and Jila who are really trying to like look at the whole system, and it's just rare in medicine.